Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. If we're grading on a curve, I'm doing good, I guess.
I think it's all about perspective these days, my friend.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I tell you, it's all about being able to see the story behind the stories, too. And that's sort of like, how much time do you have?
I've got about 25 minutes or so.
Okay, that should do it. I mean, I have a lot of questions here, a lot of things I'd like to talk about. Some of them might be beyond your purview to talk about, and you can just say so if it doesn't fit.
Okay.
Okay, one of the things I want to bring up is things like in Scottsdale, Tampa, Minneapolis, Seattle. There's so much going on, and there seems to be, within law enforcement, there seems to be this tendency to let the crowd go and not really respond and let themselves burn out, as they say. But that doesn't really work with people that are doing riots. They don't burn out. They just get infused with more energy to take it to another level. And I've been listening to 911 calls. It's a 2-minute call. Do you mind listening to a 911 call?
Sure.
Okay, hang on. This is a mother in her car.
Yeah, and they're gesturing and they're blocking.
The city has sanctioned their protest, so we just have officers that can only monitor it. They can't do anything about it, but we would recommend that
they're blocking. Get out.
Yeah, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that per city hall. So we would suggest that you report this to city hall and make a complaint there, and that way they can do something about it. Because right now they told our officers that we can't do anything about it.
How do I get out of here? I can't go backwards.
Yeah, I can't. Unless you're hurt or something or getting in an accident, our officers can't intervene and move.
I can't stay here all night, ma'am. You cannot do. I have a little girl in the car. You can't do that.
You just have to slowly get through the protest. I can't.
Okay, am I going to get arrested when I keep going? Because they're gesturing at my
as long
car.
As you don't hit any people, like people.
They're on my car, right? They're on my car right now.
But we would suggest you slowly drive through the area. Don't hit anyone with your vehicle.
I cannot get out of here. Okay.
You have to be patient, but I'll let the officers know. Okay.
Are you serious?
The city told us that we can't do anything, ma'am. The city told us that this is a sanctioned event.
But they're blocking people getting through to get out.
Yes, ma'am. The city's allowed that. We can't do anything about that. The police can't. So we're all very frustrated about this.
Get out of my car. This is going to get dangerous. I got a kid here.
Yes, ma'am. We would suggest that you call up City Hall to let them know about your frustrations, because we're all very frustrated.
This is getting scary. I cannot. They're
or if you get into like a side road or something. But yeah, there's nothing our officers can do to get them out.
Get out of here, okay? Get out of the way. This is insane. Oh, they're on my car. They're on my car.
What kind of car are you in, ma'am?
Get out.
And it goes on, and the strange thing is the operator says, "What kind of car do you have?" As if that has anything to do with anything, really. And she has a child in the car, and she's just trying to get response, and she's told repeatedly that she should call up the city hall to talk about her frustrations.
And I think that is a clear example of those bigger city politics where they're telling the police departments not to enforce laws, and then here you have a dispatcher that's having to relay that to somebody who clearly needs help, and their officers are not allowed to respond to that. I mean, that's sad.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the questions that I've been asked since I have a business right here on Skyway, and I've told a few people that I was going to be talking with you. They all come up with the same question. What's going to happen if we get a protest here and it turns into a riot? Do you guys, I was talking to, what was his name, Sergeant Pickering. I asked him this question, what are you going to do when they start breaking the law? And he said, well, I'm clear about this. I'm going to arrest them, and they're not going to get out the next day. If they break in the law, they're going to get arrested. And what is your response to that?
Well, so we'll just start unfortunately, our population base is low. That doesn't mean that people wouldn't travel here to protest. Or to riot or to loot. We've had a few protesters about 3 weeks ago that stood in front of town hall, very peacefully, law-abiding citizens, and they were holding and displaying their signs. They have a right to do that as long as they're within their, within the guidelines of the laws. And if there was an incident, we've talked, and when I say we, myself, the sheriff, other police chiefs, that we would request and utilize mutual aid, meaning we would request assistance from agencies within the county and then the region if we needed to, but we would do what we need to do to maintain order. And I know that sounds easier said than done, especially seeing what some of these agencies have been faced with, but we're not just going to stand by and let something happen to our community.
Yeah, I was watching YouTube. It was on ABC in Scottsdale, Arizona, where they completely demolished one of the shopping malls down there, and many 911 calls, people calling saying, hey, you need to get somebody out here. They stole millions of dollars worth of merchandise. And the dispatcher said that there are police at the site right now, and everybody's saying there's nobody here. There's absolutely nobody here. And I think that we're all in a touchy situation here, because now they're talking about defunding the police, and we can talk about what does that mean to you, but I can't see, if you defund the police, which would actually mean you'd end up paying police officers less. We would basically get what we pay for. I personally think we should be paying police officers more. And the other thing to touch on is, see, I was going to join the police department when I was, just turned 21, and I kept failing the verbal, because at that time I just could not see the chain of command and obeying orders no matter what. I was sort of a rebellious person, so I'd always fail the oral. But as I've grown older, I see the value of the chain of command and the fact that the police department is part of the executive branch and follows orders, period. But as we go into this, I think we're going to find that even the police officers, you've heard of the Oath Keepers, I'm sure. There are police officers and military people that are starting to speak out and say, hey, we need to go back to constitutional law and really protect ourselves, because now they're making laws to where it's going to get easier for the public to sue police officers. And I think anybody really thinking about this probably wouldn't join the police department at this time, because it's too easy to get out there, and if you end up having to pull a weapon and, heaven forbid, shoot somebody, you could not only get fired but be brought up on charges for murder if it wasn't a clear case of somebody's life was in danger.
Yeah, it is concerning when there's talk about abolishing the qualified immunity, which, essentially if an officer uses force that's, reasonable, and that those factors are weighed against another officer with similar and like training, and they're within the confines of policy, they're trying to take that away. There's talk about taking that away. And so it is scary, not only thinking, okay, well, criminally and civilly, we could be, hung out to dry. I get your point about the chain of command, and I value that as well, but we would never ask our officers or any of our staff to do anything unethical, illegal, or immoral. And so there isn't a hard line. I would expect that if one of my officers was told by a ranking officer to do something that they knew in their heart was wrong, they would oppose that, right? But, in general, I get the point of, the value there, but we have not been asked to change anything about how we do business, because, quite frankly, law enforcement in California has been training to higher standards for many, many years. there are probably some changes in the so-called police reform that are going to come down. I really feel that from what I've seen with the carotid restraint, there's either going to be some very strict limitations or it's going to get abolished completely. We have taken the opportunity to look at our use of force policy, and we've added some language to the use of the carotid restraint to include that it's, it should be considered an elevated use of force and only used when there's an imminent threat to life. And so that really puts, that up right there with deadly force at this point, just based on what's coming down and the changes that we foresee. I think that we just have to keep the mindset that law enforcement has evolved and changed many, many times over the years, and it will continue. But I think it is scary when your line staff, your officers in the field, don't feel supported, and that's concerning.
Yeah, that should be real concerning for everybody. I'm telling you. So I'd like to get your point of view. I keep hearing systemic racism within the law enforcement agencies. And I swear to you, the more I look into this and watch the wide spectrum of news, media, alternative media, it really seems like, and from my own personal experience, I don't really see systemic racism. It seems like it's being fueled by a lot of the media. And we could get into why, but that gets into a deep conversation. But I really don't see what they're talking about as far as being systemic.
I don't see that. I mean, and we have some officers, a couple that have been here for 20 years. I'm on my 14th year, and we have some brand new officers, and so kind of a varied experience pool. We've had some of our officers have come from other agencies, but I don't see it. There isn't I've never seen in my career where there's that motivation to specifically go out to target and enforce laws only because of someone's race or their perceived race. That is just not the case. And, we have racial profiling training that we do. I believe it's supposed to be every 2 years, but we go over it every year. We have policies about that and what that looks like. And so, I tell people that police officers go out and do their job. You may think that they're harassing people, but really what they're doing is they're putting their training and experience to use, and they're criminally profiling, so people's behavior, what they're doing, how they're acting, and that's how we contact people and make arrests by, finding probable cause. And I'd say 90% of the time, when you make a traffic stop, you don't even know who you're stopping, whether it's a male, female, or what their nationality is. You have no idea. So I would have to agree with you. I think a lot of these topics are being fueled by the news, social media, and it has spiraled to a point now where it's quite frankly scary because people are just going off of what they're hearing, and it's not true.
Right. Yeah, I know with myself publishing the LotusGuide, I have to be careful now because if I have anything to say about Black Lives Matter, I'm looked at as a racist. And this does not fly in the face of any common sense because you can go out there and you can protest with the Black Lives Matter. You can protest with Antifa, which is actually short for anti-fascist, and you can go out there and protest with them, but you cannot protest against COVID-19, and you cannot protest against the Black Lives Matter. And people like the co-founders of the Black Panthers, even Candace Owens, they're all speaking up. Black people can speak up and say, hey, we need to watch out how we're going here because Black Lives Matter is morphing into more of a political party. And now they're tracing down millions and millions of dollars for transportation And like the police chief in Minneapolis, Police Chief Madaria Arredondo, he said that many of the protesters there that were actually rioters, agitators, weren't even from Minneapolis. They're being bussed in, they're being flown in, and now as they follow the money, the money is going to a couple of nonprofits, and it's really difficult to see who's putting up this money to actually hire for $200 a day. It's on their website. They send you a little form to fill out and everything. $200 a day to go and protest, but violently.
That's sad, because how does it make sense to go into anybody's community and destroy it? It does nothing but sets back our economy further, puts people out of business, takes food off the families' tables. It does not make sense. And to your point, you're right. It's just something that you can't oppose verbally or in writing, because it's not going to be viewed well, and there doesn't seem to be any room for discussion there, and that's just unfortunate.
Well, and it doesn't make sense unless you turn the whole thing upside down, which our world is pretty much at that point. Maybe that's the whole point. I mean, I remember reading in George Orwell's 1984, the whole point of completely erasing the past is to rewrite it, because as the book goes along and they're forming a one world kind of a government, they realize the only way you can control the present is if you destroy the past, and then once you're controlling the present, you can predict where the future's going. And this gets into tearing down statues, and I know the governor of Montana, I think it is, or South Dakota, he's already getting ready to protect Mount Rushmore. And it makes me think, okay, what is really going on here? And is this something that we really have to, as military and as law enforcement and as concerned citizens, stand up and start talking, even if the rhetoric starts turning against you? Because if this continues on, especially with the second lockdown, I know my business, we're thinking about publishing instead of 4 times a year, 3 times a year. I was talking with Chico News and Review, and they're going to try to do once a month. If it gets any worse, it's going to be really tough. I mean, even now, if everything would come back online, it's going to take 10 years. It took 10 years after the 2008 financial collapse, and we still haven't built back from that. Then, of course, here in Paradise area, we went through the fire, the Paradise Camp Fire, and now the COVID-19. This whole community has really taken a beating, but it's resilient. I mean, we opened up the LotusGuide Center right after the fire because the restoration people, the city hall, the chamber, they were all saying they need places to hold meetings. So we made this place available for meetings. And some of the people that showed up is just amazing people. I mean, some of the police officers that came, sit in on the meetings, and just sort of getting a pulse of the community was inspiring. But we can't take too much more, especially if businesses don't run right.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm not, I don't claim to be any type of big history buff, but one thing that has always resonated in my mind is that, if you don't learn from the past, history will repeat itself, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we justify standing by as we're seeing, the statue of John Sutter being taken down, and all these different government groups are considering renaming schools and taking information out, basically rewriting history or omitting it and taking it out of the history books. I don't understand, because, you should put some value in teaching past lessons into future generations so that they have an understanding of what it is like to actually live where we live and to have our freedoms and our rights and our Constitution. It's really sad to see.
Yeah, because people that your age and my age, we tend to forget this, but as children are being born into these new generations, if they don't really have the past to look at and learn from, they will repeat it. And other organizations and agencies could more easily orchestrate whatever they want to. I mean, the perfect example of the statues, it's a no-brainer, really. Anybody thinking about it just a little bit could say, okay, Andrew Jackson or whoever it is they're tearing down, Ulysses S. Grant, we could say what they did, the good things, and we could also put on a plaque what they did wrong. Christopher Columbus, yeah, they say he discovered America, but in reality, the Vikings and many other cultures came here before him, and he was probably instrumental in setting up the first waves of genocide towards the Native American Indians. This would be more realistic and true to the point, and we could learn from that. But if you just tear down statues and erase it digitally, I'm not too sure what they're thinking about, but young people won't have much to go on.
No. And then, again, right, I mean, it's kind of like reinventing the wheel. We always talk about that here in law enforcement because things can be so complicated. Don't reinvent the wheel. Here, I have a mask for that. Or, when it comes to history, it's even more critical because you don't want to make the same mistakes twice because you're not moving forward, right?
Yep. Yeah, I don't mind making mistakes. I've actually learned a lot from my mistakes, but I do not like to make the same mistake twice.
Right.
Well, I think we've covered most everything, Chief, except to say if you're ever over in the area, you know where we are. We're right next door to Nikki's.
Okay.
Drop in and introduce yourself and say hello.
I will, and I appreciate you reaching out, and I will say this, I'll echo what you said about Paradise being resilient, being a strong community. I feel like even though we're in this reset phase, I feel fortunate that our population is what it is. Our community supports local law enforcement, and I feel that there's a lot of good things to look forward to in our future, and I hope that nobody proves me wrong and loads up a bunch of buses and comes up here, but I really feel like we're in a good place, and we are supported. So for us, we've been fortunate that aside from COVID, business as usual, and we're just going to keep pushing forward and do what we can to serve our community. So if there is any other questions or concerns that come up, feel free to reach out, and I'll try and address those. And if I need to put information out to the public, I will.
Okay, Chief. I appreciate your time, and I suppose you can recognize this from the community. We are all in this together, and you guys have a lot of support out here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. You take care and have a nice day.
All right, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.